This site is in East Ayrshire, in Strathannick, that is the valley of the Annick River. The distance there is Lake Castleton, once part of the lands of Lambroughton, which lies in the distance amongst the trees. This appears to be a form of sunken lane, although now very much used as a shelter belt. And this runs down to townhead of Lambroughton, originally the site of the Lambroughton manor house. We know that the first property of the Cunningham family in this part of Ayrshire was Lambroughton. Those are the Cunninghams who later became the Earls of Glencairn and finally moved to Finlayston. That was their last major house. Lambroughton seemed to have a considerable amount of independence. And at one point, we know that in 1632, Alexander Cunningham held the mills of Lambroughton and also of Cranshaw. Cranshaw seems to be at the other end of Lambroughton Loch, near Old Alton. No longer any visible remains of the site now. Lambroughton Mill is marked on one of the old maps, but not at all clear where it was. However, the indications are that it may have lain down this lane. There's a steep drop at the bottom, a fairly steep drop. However, in the days that this mill was operating in the 1630s, there were no wheeled vehicles. The farmers moved everything on sledges, so this would have been perfectly suitable. There was also a slightly mysterious lane running in the distance there from Lake Castleton right down to what may have been the site of Lambroughton Mill. At Lambroughton Mill site there is a weir, and there were stepping stones marked at one point. And we know from another map that a mill was somewhere in this location. It's just simply marked as the word mill with a couple of buildings beside it. In the distance there is Chapelton, and there are at least one ford, if not more, crossing the Annick water up at that point. This is beside the Annick water at the possible site of Lambroughton Mill. In the distance is the old Ayrshire estate and the Anderson's plantation. Running up to the possible mill site is an old lane which runs right up to Lake Castleton. And here, suspicious suggestions of a dwelling here at one time, which is a crabapple tree, maybe derived from a fully developed apple, which is then developed back into the wild type, the crabapple. Possible lane just up the hill there, the bank. And again, another piece of suggestive evidence. This tree here is rather unusual. This is a hornbeam. The name hornbeam comes from the fact that the wood is very hard, and the wood was used in the sacrificial gearing of water wheels, of water mills. That is, the cast iron section, the cast iron cogs, if they broke because, say, the sudden stop of the water wheel due to a log, then that would be very expensive to repair. So using cogs, teeth, made of hard wood, such as hornbeam, was the solution. Also, running down this old lane here, not that these trees are old enough to have been here back in the 1630s, are some beech trees, which were also used. Farmers didn't just plant these trees to beautify the surroundings. They were planted for practical purposes, and you often find hornbeam and beech planted near mill sites. Also, the ownership of the land here and the divisions. This field has been cut off dead at an angle, and this portion of land where the mill might have stood is a separate entity. It also has various lumps and bumps suggestive of other structures here. Also, the 1747 map, Roy's map, it shows various other buildings in this area here, possibly in the miller's house or maybe other dwellings. Across here on the holm in this field, there are also maps showing what might have been a grain store of some sort, or some basic wooden building, though the farmer says that ploughing this field has not brought up any stones. The woods in the distance there are of High Chapelton, running down to Chapelton House. And the stones here, although marked as stepping stones on the map, are reminiscent of stones that would be used to build a dam or a weir, to provide a slight head of water for a water wheel, which would be maybe roughly down where the willow trees are overhanging the Annick water. Seems like a good site for a mill. Mills were held under the right of thirlage, whereby the local baron, the local laird, could force all his tenants to go to his mill. That would give him extra income, support the miller. But when thirlage was finally abandoned in the early 19th century, many small mills that would only survive because of the thirlage were abandoned, and larger mills replaced them, like Laneshaw Mill up at Stewarton. This is a low wall, dry stone diking, running along the end of the lane, basically partitioning off this stretch of land to run to the field in the distance where the fallen hornbeam tree is. These are the sort of stones that could well have come from an old building on the site. Hornbeams are rarely found in the countryside. Certainly they are not native. They don't grow wild. Very distinctive seeds.